really trying to make enough money to like feed myself and live somewhat comfortably, and it keeps getting harder and harder.
The music industry is facing numerous challenges, but the issue currently gaining a lot of traction seems to be merch cuts. Basically, venues are taking a percentage of artists' merch sales at the end of the night, which is typically between 10 and 40%. This practice, which has been going on for an extended period, is becoming even more burdensome for artists due to inflation and their increasingly slender profit margins. So when you attend a live performance and encounter exorbitant merchandise prices, it's often a direct consequence of venues claiming a substantial share of the sales, further exacerbating the financial challenges that artists deal with. The issue gained momentum after several musicians revealed how much venues were taking from their merch sales. Tomberlin criticized a Virginia venue for its proposed 41% merch cut, while Jeff Rosenstock posted a spreadsheet of different venues' merch cuts for his recent tour. These revelations propelled the issue of merch cuts into the spotlight, and now everyone is talking. These stories highlight the challenges faced by artists and independent venues. Smaller venues struggle in a market dominated by Live Nation and AEG, which have a monopoly on the live music industry. These venues argue that they need a share of merch sales to survive. On the other hand, smaller artists emphasize how important merch sales are for their livelihood, especially given the wildly low payout from streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music, which only pay fractions of a penny per stream. And so the two parties, who need each other to stay afloat, find themselves at an impasse.
We get to make up for what we lose on streaming by selling vinyl, CDs, t-shirts, hoodies, art books, etc. directly to our audience.
They have nothing to do with the design or the production or the transport or the sale or anything to do with merchandise, but they still somehow feel entitled to take a percentage of it.
Those merch sales really make or break whether we're making anything, whether we can pay ourselves, whether we can afford to all eat that day without losing money and going into our savings.
The financial challenges that artists deal with are frequently eclipsed by the perceived glamour of the entertainment industry, but going on tour entails significant expenses, including numerous hidden costs that you might not immediately think of.
I mean, I don't just have a van, so I have to rent a van, I have to pay for the gas, which is terrible mileage in said van, and then hotels every night. All five of us like cram into one hotel room to try to save money.
You drive 400 miles to play a show, paying $5 a gallon for gas. You put all of your energy into putting on a good show, and then the venue wants to take what little profit margin you have.
Everything you're seeing costs something on stage, and the margins are getting slimmer and slimmer, and artists are depending more and more on the already slim margins from merch sales.
It is imperative for an artist like me, an independent artist, a mid-tier artist, a small-time artist, to have that vinyl business, that merchandise business.
So if a venue then comes and says, hey, we're going to take 20, 30, even 40% of that merch money, that is putting almost all bands into the negative for playing those shows on tour.
You can sometimes do better if the shows do well and you sell more tickets, but ultimately that alone, you'd probably just break even, if that, in terms of the expenses. So really the only thing that's making it financially viable to do is selling merch.
So why do venues take a portion of artists' earnings when artists are the ones who bring business to the venues? Artists don't get a cut from the bar sales, so why do venues feel entitled to take a percentage of something that they have nothing to do with? NowThis contacted the National Independent Venue Association, which represents independent venues, but received no response. We also reached out to the Virginia venue planning that 41% merch cut, and it defended it as standard practice. Venues often argue that they provide the space for merch sales, justifying their cut that way. They might even implement forced sell policies, mandating artists to use the venue's handler and payment processor, which is another way they defend their substantial share. Their leverage is even stronger because a big part of the music industry is live performances. Artists like what they do even though it might not pay a lot, and they want to be on stage. The artists we interviewed expressed sympathy for independent venues, recognizing the difficulties they encounter in the face of corporate giants like Live Nation and AEG. However, they firmly maintained that taking a share of merch sales shouldn't be the solution to the venue's financial struggles.
Everyone's trying to get as much of the pie as they can. And we understand that's just how the world works.
We can sympathize with where small venues might be in a position of economic hardship right now and kind of work toward a solution, but the solution certainly cannot be to squeeze artists even harder at a time when most middle-class, working-class artists can barely afford to be doing this anymore.
No one's going to sleep on a bed of money every night, except for Live Nation, And so to have artists and independent venues fighting with one another is tough because we're all kind of trying to do the same thing. And it seems like we all want an equitable system.
Rents are higher than they've ever been. There's no government support for the arts in this country. Real estate is absolutely insane. And truly small independent venues are victims of that as well.
We're in an era where the economics of music are more difficult to be a sustainable business in than ever before. But I don't think that venues or anyone should go after the artist or the band's pocket first, because I think typically speaking, the artist and the band or the performer has the most to lose.
And several independent venues hear this. The United Musicians and Allied Workers Union has launched a campaign called My Merch, urging North American venues to pledge against taking further merch cuts. Currently, more than 170 venues have signed on, and the list of supporters is expanding. So what's to stop artists from playing exclusively at these venues?
I always think about this when we book a tour. Think about routing a tour and how hard that is when you have 100 artists all trying to kind of do the same thing. And St. Louis has got 3 places that kind of work for what you want to do. And 10 bands are trying to come through St. Louis that night.
It's hard enough to find a place to play because even so, we're driving 6+ hours every day to get to another place where there's even a place to play. The country's really big and it's pretty spread out and there's not that many spots around. And I'm sure they know that. So that's, kind of part of their leverage.
The music industry, like a lot of industries, is a monopoly. And I think it's absurd to put that burden on a kind of individualized decision of play or not to play, just like it would be absurd to go up to a WGA writer and say, well, just don't agree to have your show on Netflix. It's like there's, a few streaming services for video and for music. To say it's on the burden of the artist to opt in or opt out is absurd. It's the same with live music, right? Ticketmaster, Live Nation, AEG, MSG, a few companies own so many venues, are buying up even more venues, and then they kind of dictate the market for those smaller remaining venues.
Live Nation, which owns more than 338 venues globally, recently launched an initiative in partnership with Willie Nelson called On the Road Again. The 77 participating venues are offering artists a $1,500 travel stipend and are refraining from taking a merch cut. It's a step in the right direction, but the way Live Nation was able to get here was by exploiting artists in the first place.
Their decision to do this is not coming out of the goodness of their heart. It's coming out of musicians giving them hell about this for a long time now. On the other hand, these big corporate venues were sort of the originators of merch cuts, and it's spread even further throughout the live music industry as they've become more powerful. And so in some ways, it's like them giving back money that was already ours to begin with.
It's the same kind of thing that happens across all aspects of the consumerist model. You give it a new paint job and then you say it's fixed. But everybody knows that it's not fixed.
So how can we fix this issue to ensure the well-being of both artists and venues? In an industry dedicated to sharing music with people, how can we safeguard its integrity and sustainability?
I think that the moment we're in now is a little bit like what happened with the writers' strike and now the Screen Actors Guild strike. It's an issue a lot of people probably have no awareness of, and now there's growing awareness, and it's sort of an education campaign right now to talk about the fee and get some momentum going towards the discussion. And on the venue side, they should have to justify their fees, and then we can meet somewhere in the middle, I'm sure.
I think the way forward is having mutual respect, and these massive live industry corporations, they're not depending on artist merch cuts to survive. They're fine. They have lots of money. I think the way forward is just acknowledging that and not trying to like nickel and dime artists who are really struggling, really like putting their health, their financial stability on the line because they love what they do. Venues need to not take merch cuts.
I think that we should all just do the right thing. Venues don't ask for merch cuts. Bands don't give up the merch cut, because at the end of the day, we're in an industry that is getting harder and harder to freaking sustain itself, whether we're talking about live music or the recording industry. I don't think that this is a time when we're going through a ton of changes and many of us are hurting to try to dig in each other's pockets. Let's come together to keep this whole business, keep this dream alive, because music is the whole reason why we're here in the first place, because we love it.